My name is Claire Pemberton, and 3 days ago, my 8-year-old daughter did something that still takes my breath away. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I frosted 30 cupcakes for her birthday party, where I carefully arranged pink roses in vases, where I told myself this time would be different with my mother-in-law. But I was wrong. What Dorothy did at that party was unforgivable. What Hazel did in response, that was pure brilliance. Picture this. 20 guests in our backyard, children laughing, adults chatting over lemonade, and my daughter Hazel standing in front of her birthday cake with pure joy on her face. She'd been counting down to this moment for weeks. 8 candles flickered in the afternoon breeze, and her purple dress, the one her grandmother had sent from Neiman Marcus, sparkled in the sunlight. Everything was perfect until Dorothy Sinclair, my husband Ryan's mother, stood up and destroyed it all. She didn't just ruin a party. She slapped that beautiful 3-tier cake right off the table, sending it crashing onto our patio. Pink frosting exploded everywhere. Cake chunks scattered across the concrete. The Princess Crown topper I'd specially ordered shattered into plastic pieces. And as my daughter stood there with tears streaming down her face, Dorothy looked her straight in the eye and said words that should never come from a grandmother's mouth. She doesn't deserve happiness. The entire yard went silent. 20 guests suddenly found interesting things to look at in their drinks, on their phones, anywhere but at our family's raw moment of cruelty. My husband Ryan stood frozen, his mouth open but no words coming out. Uncle Gerald had his hand over his face. Aunt Beatrice was gripping her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. And me? I was already moving toward Dorothy, ready to say things I'd held back for 7 years, when something extraordinary happened. Hazel wiped her tears with the back of her hand, not in that defeated way children do when they're crushed, but with determination. She walked over to the gift table, picked up her tablet, the expensive one Dorothy had given her last Christmas, with a lecture about proper education, and she turned to face her grandmother. The transformation was remarkable. My 8-year-old daughter, who minutes before had been sobbing over her destroyed birthday cake, now stood with her shoulders back and her chin raised. "Grandma," she said, and her voice was steady as steel, "should I show everyone the video you begged me to delete?" The question hung in the air like electricity before a storm. Dorothy's face went through a series of expressions so fast it was almost comical. Confusion, recognition, then pure panic. Her perfectly manicured hand went to her throat, grabbing the pearl necklace she always wore, the one she claimed had been in the Sinclair family for generations. "What video?" Dorothy's voice cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about, child." But Hazel held that tablet against her chest like armor, and she smiled. Not a mean smile, not vengeful, but confident. Like she finally understood something important about power and truth and standing up for yourself. "The video from last week, Grandma. When you visited while Mom was at work, you said so many interesting things about Mom, about Daddy, about Uncle Gerald, and especially about Grandpa Harold and someone named Richard." Every adult in that backyard suddenly became very interested in what my 8-year-old had to say. Uncle Gerald stepped forward. Aunt Beatrice set down her wine glass. Even our neighbors, the Johnsons, who'd been trying to slip out quietly, stopped at the gate. And Ryan, my conflict-avoidant husband, who'd never once stood up to his mother in 7 years of marriage, finally found his voice. "What video, Hazel?" he asked. But he was looking at his mother. The tablet in Hazel's hands might as well have been a loaded weapon for how Dorothy reacted to it. This woman who'd terrorized our family with her wealth, her connections, her constant threats about inheritance and belonging, was reduced to bargaining with a child. "Sweetheart," Dorothy tried, her voice syrupy fake, "that's private family business. We don't air family matters in public." "Like destroying my birthday cake wasn't public?" Hazel asked. "Like telling me I don't deserve happiness in front of all my friends wasn't public?" And that's when I knew my daughter had learned something valuable. Bullies only understand one language, and it's not kindness or patience or trying harder to please them, it's strength. And in that moment, holding her tablet with rock-steady hands, my 8-year-old daughter was the strongest person in our backyard. The morning of Hazel's party had started with such promise. I'd been up since 5, putting final touches on decorations and checking my lists for the 3rd time. Ryan found me in the kitchen arranging fruit kebabs into perfect rainbow patterns. "You know she'd be happy with just a cake and some balloons," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. But we both knew this party was about more than just Hazel. It was my attempt to finally get Dorothy Sinclair to see us as worthy of her family name. 7 years ago, when Ryan proposed to me at sunset on Lighthouse Beach, I thought I was getting a fairy tale. He was handsome, successful, came from a good family, and most importantly, he looked at me like I hung the moon. What I didn't realize was that marrying Ryan meant marrying into Dorothy's kingdom, where she ruled with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. The first time I met Dorothy, she looked me up and down and asked, "Public school teacher?" The way she said it, you'd think I'd told her I wrestled alligators for a living. How quaint. Ryan's father and I had hoped he'd marry someone more, well, ambitious. That should have been my warning, but I was young and in love and convinced I could win her over. When Hazel was born, Dorothy's initial reaction gave me hope. She held my baby girl with something approaching tenderness and declared, "Finally a grandchild. She has the Sinclair eyes." For about 6 months, Dorothy was almost pleasant. She bought expensive nursery furniture, arranged for a baby nurse, and even complimented my choice of middle name for Hazel. I thought motherhood had softened her. The honeymoon ended when Hazel started walking. "She's clumsy," Dorothy observed during a Sunday dinner. "You should enroll her in ballet immediately. We can't have a graceless Sinclair." When Hazel was 3 and preferred finger painting to the fancy dollhouse Dorothy bought, the criticism intensified. "You're letting her become wild, Claire. This is what happens when children aren't given proper structure." But the real breakdown in our relationship came last year. Dorothy had pulled strings to get Hazel tested for Pemberton Academy, her alma mater and the most exclusive private school in the state. When the rejection letter arrived, Dorothy didn't speak to me for a month. Then at Thanksgiving, after 3 glasses of wine, she let loose. If Ryan had married Victoria Ashford like I'd arranged, this never would have happened. The Ashfords have been at Pemberton for 4 generations. Ryan's father, Harold, had been our buffer. A kind man who'd built his fortune in commercial real estate but never forgot his middle-class roots. Harold would squeeze my shoulder at family dinners and whisper, "Don't let her get to you, dear. She wasn't born with money either, you know." When he died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, we lost our only ally in the Sinclair family. Dorothy's grief transformed her from difficult to downright cruel. She'd show up unannounced to criticize my housekeeping. She'd take Hazel shopping and return her with stories about how Grandma says my regular clothes are embarrassing. She told anyone who'd listen that Ryan had married down and that I was lucky to have landed him. Uncle Gerald, Ryan's younger brother, tried to help when he could. He'd married Beatrice against Dorothy's wishes, too, though Beatrice came from new money, which was slightly more acceptable than my no-money background. "Just ignore her," Gerald would advise. "She'll move on to another target eventually." But she never did. I was the permanent thorn in Dorothy's perfectly manicured side. Planning Hazel's 8th birthday party became my mission. If I could just throw the perfect party, invite the right people, serve the right food, maybe Dorothy would finally see that I belonged. I studied party planning blogs like they were religious texts. I hired a professional baker for the cake. I even swallowed my pride and asked Dorothy for her input on the guest list. "Well," she'd said, looking at my carefully written names, "I suppose these people will do, though I don't know why you're inviting the whole neighborhood. Hazel should be cultivating friendships with children from better families." But she agreed to come, and that felt like progress. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I kept walking through my mental checklist, wondering what I'd forgotten, what detail Dorothy would find lacking. Ryan told me I was overthinking it, that his mother would behave herself at a child's party. "She loves Hazel," he assured me. "She wouldn't do anything to hurt her." How wrong we both were. Dorothy didn't just hurt Hazel that day. She revealed exactly what she thought of all of us. The party started at 2 o'clock sharp, just as I'd planned. Hazel's friends from school arrived first, their parents complimenting the decorations, while the kids immediately ran toward the bounce house we'd rented. The Johnsons from next door brought their twins, who handed Hazel a handmade birthday card that made her squeal with delight. Everything was falling into place exactly as I'd imagined. Dorothy arrived an hour late, naturally. I watched from the kitchen window as her Mercedes pulled into our driveway, followed by Gerald's BMW. She emerged wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage, her hair perfectly styled despite the warm afternoon. Gerald helped Beatrice out of their car, and I saw them exchange a look that clearly said, "Let's get through this." "Grandma!" Hazel ran across the yard, her purple dress flying behind her. Dorothy accepted her hug stiffly, then held her at arm's length. "That dress looks cheaper than I remember," she announced, loud enough for several parents to hear. "Did your mother wash it wrong?" Hazel's face fell immediately. "No, Grandma. Mom was really careful with it. She hand-washed it and everything." "Well, something's off about it." Dorothy brushed past Hazel and surveyed the party with the expression of someone inspecting a crime scene. "Claire, the bounce house is rather tacky, don't you think? And paper plates? Really?" "They have princesses on them," I said, keeping my voice level. "Hazel picked them out herself." "Of course she did." The disdain in those 4 words could have curdled milk. Ryan appeared at my side, placing a warning hand on my lower back. "Mom, thanks for coming. Can I get you something to drink?" "Just water, with ice, in a real glass if you have any." The next hour was torture, disguised as celebration. While the children played pin, the tail on the unicorn, Dorothy provided running commentary from her throne-like position on our best patio chair. These games are so mindless. When Hazel opened presents, Dorothy had something to say about each one. The art set, from me, was encouraging mediocrity. The science kit from the Johnsons was too advanced for her capabilities. The books from her teacher were public school quality. Uncle Gerald tried to run interference. "Dorothy, perhaps we could focus on enjoying the party?" But she silenced him with one of her signature looks, the kind that had probably been freezing people in place since her sorority days. The real tension started during the talent show portion, something Hazel had specifically requested. Each child got up to perform something special. When little Amy Johnson sang a Taylor Swift song off-key but with enthusiasm, Dorothy actually laughed. Not a kind laugh, but the sort that made Amy's mother flush red and pull her daughter closer. Hazel performed last, doing a dance routine she'd been practicing for weeks. She moved with the natural grace of a happy child, spinning and leaping with pure joy. I was filming on my phone, tears pricking my eyes at how proud she looked. Then I heard Dorothy's stage whisper to Beatrice, "This is what happens when you can't afford proper dance lessons. The child moves like a baby elephant." Hazel heard it too. She stopped mid-spin, her arms dropping to her sides. But she finished the routine, her smile now forced, and the applause from the other guests couldn't erase the damage done. "Time for cake," I announced, desperate to move past the moment. I'd practiced carrying that 3-tier masterpiece, knew exactly how to balance it, how to make an entrance that would photograph perfectly. The bakery had outdone themselves with pink frosting roses, edible glitter, and a princess crown on top that actually sparkled. As I walked out, everyone started singing Happy Birthday, everyone except Dorothy. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the patio stones. "This is ridiculous," she announced over the singing. "All this fuss for a child who can't even get into a proper school." The singing faltered but continued weakly. I kept walking toward the table, focusing on Hazel's face, trying to salvage the moment. We were 3 verses in when Dorothy's voice cut through again. "You know she's never going to amount to anything, right? Not with you as her mother, Claire." "Mom, please," Ryan finally spoke up. "It's Hazel's birthday." "Exactly. And look at this spectacle. You're teaching her that mediocrity deserves celebration." Dorothy moved toward the table where I'd just set down the cake. Her eyes had that glint I'd seen before, right before she'd do something cruel. She needs to learn that, in this family, we earn our happiness. The slap was vicious and deliberate. Her palm connected with the side of the cake with such force that it didn't just tip over, it flew off the table entirely. 3 tiers of pink perfection exploded against the concrete patio. Frosting splattered across chairs, plates, and the hem of Amy Johnson's party dress. The crown topper skittered across the ground and stopped at Hazel's feet, broken into 3 pieces. "She doesn't deserve happiness," Dorothy declared, staring straight at my daughter. "Not until she proves she's truly a Sinclair." The silence that followed was absolute. 20 guests stood frozen like we were playing the world's most horrible game of statues. I saw Mrs. Johnson cover her daughter Amy's eyes. Mr. Peterson from across the street had his phone halfway raised, like he'd been about to take a photo but couldn't process what he'd just witnessed. Even the children, usually impossible to quiet, stood motionless, their young minds trying to understand why a grandmother would do something so mean. Hazel stood in the middle of it all, tears rolling down her cheeks as she stared at the destroyed cake. Her special cake, the one she'd helped design, the one she'd been dreaming about for weeks. Pink frosting was splattered across her new shoes, the ones she'd insisted on saving specifically for her birthday. Her lower lip trembled, and I watched her hands ball into tiny fists at her sides. My maternal rage kicked in with the force of a hurricane. I started moving toward Dorothy, words I'd held back for 7 years rising in my throat. This woman had insulted me, belittled my career, questioned my worth, and I'd taken it all. But attacking my child? That was the line she should never have crossed. Ryan grabbed my arm, not to stop me, but more like he was anchoring himself, his face pale with shock. "How dare you?" I started, my voice low and dangerous. But before I could continue, before I could unleash years of pent-up fury, something unexpected happened. Hazel unclenched her fists. She took a deep breath that seemed too big for her small body. Then, with movements so calm they seemed almost rehearsed, she wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Not frantically, not desperately, but deliberately, like she was clearing a window to see better. She turned away from the cake disaster and walked to the gift table with purpose. Everyone watched as she picked up her tablet, the silver one in the expensive case that Dorothy had given her last Christmas. I remembered that day clearly because Dorothy had made such a production of it, announcing that proper education requires proper tools and making sure everyone knew exactly how much it had cost. Hazel had thanked her politely, but later told me she would have preferred books. Now Hazel held that tablet against her chest and turned to face her grandmother. The transformation in my daughter was stunning. The crying 8-year-old was gone, replaced by someone who looked older, wiser, and completely in control. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady as a news anchor's. "Grandma, should I show everyone the video you begged me to delete?" Dorothy's superior expression crumbled instantly. "What video? What are you talking about, child?" "The one from last week," Hazel said, her finger hovering over the tablet screen. "Tuesday afternoon. Mom was at work and Daddy was in his office on a conference call. You didn't know I was in the living room recording my dance practice for TikTok. Remember? You were on the phone for a really long time." The color drained from Dorothy's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her perfectly manicured hand went to her throat, fingers finding her pearl necklace like it was a lifeline. "Hazel, sweetheart, I don't know what you think you heard, but grown-up conversations are private." "Is it private when you called Mom a gold digger?" Hazel asked, tilting her head slightly. "Or when you told the person on the phone that Uncle Gerald was— what was the word? Oh, right, a pathetic leech who would never see a penny of Grandpa's money if you could help it?" Gerald stepped forward, his casual demeanor replaced with sharp attention. "What did you just say?" Hazel shifted the tablet in her hands, making sure everyone could see she had it ready to play. "There's more, Uncle Gerald. She talked about Grandpa's will, about hiding money, and she kept calling someone named Richard Darling. She said something about waiting 2 years after Grandpa died being respectable enough." Beatrice gasped audibly. Several of the party guests moved closer, their polite discomfort replaced with genuine interest. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was revelation. Dorothy's voice went shrill. "You're making this up. You're lying." "I don't lie, Grandma," Hazel said simply. "Mom taught me that lying is wrong. But you lied, didn't you? You lied to Grandpa. You lied to Daddy and Uncle Gerald. And you've been lying to everyone." Ryan stepped forward, his grip on my arm loosening. "Hazel, what exactly is on that video?" My daughter looked at her father with those big eyes, the Sinclair eyes that Dorothy had once been so proud of. "Do you really want to know, Daddy? It's pretty sad. Grandma says mean things about everyone, even you." The backyard had become an arena, and my 8-year-old daughter stood at its center, holding all the power in her small hands. The woman who'd ruled through intimidation and wealth was being brought down by the very grandchild she'd just claimed didn't deserve happiness. Dorothy lunged forward with surprising speed for a woman in heels, her hands reaching for the tablet. "Give that to me right now, you little brat!" Hazel stepped backward, holding the device high above her head. The move was so smooth, so prepared, that I realized my daughter had anticipated this exact reaction. She'd thought this through, planned for her grandmother's desperation. "Why are you so scared of a video if you didn't do anything wrong, Grandma?" "This is blackmail!" Dorothy shrieked, her composed facade completely shattered. She looked around wildly at the guests, searching for support. "You're all witnessing this child trying to blackmail me. This is Claire's influence teaching her daughter these manipulative tactics." Uncle Gerald moved between Dorothy and Hazel, his face dark with anger I'd never seen before. "No, Dorothy. The only manipulation I'm seeing is yours. Now I want to hear what's on that video. Play it, Hazel." "Gerald, don't be ridiculous," Dorothy snapped, but her voice wavered. "You're going to believe a child's made-up stories?" "The same. Child you just assaulted by destroying her birthday cake." Beatrice stepped forward, linking her arm through Gerald's. "The same child you just told doesn't deserve happiness?" "Yes, Dorothy. I think we'd all like to hear this video." Ryan found his voice, stronger than I'd ever heard it when addressing his mother. "Hazel, play the video." My daughter looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. I nodded, my heart pounding. Whatever was on that tablet, whatever Dorothy had said, it was time for the truth to come out. Hazel turned the screen toward the crowd and pressed play. Dorothy's voice, clear and venomous, filled the backyard. The quality was remarkably good, picking up every word with crystal clarity. "Richard, darling, I can't wait until this charade is over." Dorothy's recorded voice made everyone lean in. 2 years since Harold died is respectable enough for us to go public. These idiots have no idea we've been together for 3 years. The gasp from the crowd was collective. Gerald's face went white, then red. "On the recording," Dorothy continued, unaware she was being filmed from across the room. "The vacation house in Martha's Vineyard. Harold wanted it to go to the grandchildren. Can you believe that? Well, I fixed that problem. A few changes to the will, and it's mine. Gerald will never know the difference. He's too stupid to question anything, and Ryan's too weak to fight me even if he suspected." "You forged Dad's will?" Gerald's real-time voice was barely controlled fury. The recording kept playing. "Claire, that gold-digging piece of trash, I've already talked to my lawyer about protecting the family assets. If Ryan ever grows a spine and divorces her, she won't see a penny. Not that he will. I've trained him too well. He knows what happens when you cross me." My husband's face was a study in devastation. 37 years of manipulation laid bare in a single recording. But Dorothy wasn't done on the video. Her voice turned nastier. "And that grandchild of mine? Hazel? She's a lost cause. Clearly inherited her mother's inferior genes. I tried to get her tested for learning disabilities, Secretly sent her information to a specialist. Didn't find anything, but I know something's wrong with her. No true Sinclair would be so ordinary." The real Hazel stood taller, her chin raised despite the horrible words. The recording continued for another minute, Dorothy detailing her plans to gradually push me out of the family, to convince Ryan I was having an affair, to turn Hazel against me as she got older. "The best part," the recorded Dorothy laughed, a sound like breaking glass, "is that they all still try so hard to please me. That pathetic birthday party Claire's planning, she actually asked for my input like I care about some trashy backyard carnival. I'll go, of course. I need to document how unsuitable she is as a mother." The recording ended. The silence that followed was deafening. Every guest stared at Dorothy, who stood in the middle of the patio like a statue made of rage and fear. "That's fabricated!" she finally screamed. "That's AI or something. You can fake anything these days." "Is Richard fake too?" Beatrice asked coldly. "Because I remember you mentioning someone named Richard Hartley from your country club. Your golf partner's widow seemed very upset when he started dating someone right after her husband died." Dorothy's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. Ryan stepped forward, and for a moment, I thought he might actually comfort his mother despite everything. Instead, he took the tablet from Hazel's hands, looked at the screen, then back at Dorothy. "Get out," he said quietly. Then his voice rose to a roar that made everyone jump. "Get out of my house! Get out of our lives!" Dorothy looked around desperately, searching for any ally, any sympathetic face. She found none. Even the neighbors who barely knew us looked disgusted. Mrs. Johnson was holding Amy protectively. Mr. Peterson had his phone out, recording everything. Dorothy left without another word, her cream-colored suit stained with cake frosting as she navigated around the destruction she'd caused. Her heels clicked against the patio in sharp, angry strikes, but her usual commanding presence was gone. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like a queen stripped of her crown. Uncle Gerald followed her to the driveway, his phone already pressed to his ear, and I heard him say, "Yes, I need to speak with someone about contesting a will that may have been forged." The party guests slowly came back to life. Mrs. Johnson was the first to move, grabbing paper towels from the table and starting to clean up cake debris. "Let me help with this mess," she said kindly, giving me a supportive smile. Within minutes, everyone was helping, turning what could have been an awful ending into something like community. But the moment that will stay with me forever came when Hazel tugged on my dress. I knelt down to her level, ready to console my brave little girl, when she whispered something that stunned me. "Mom, I need to tell you a secret. I didn't actually record Grandma." I pulled back to look at her face. "What do you mean?" "I heard her say all those things on the phone last week. I was practicing my dance in the living room, and she didn't know I was there. But I wasn't recording. My tablet was charging in my room." She bit her lip, looking worried. I just remembered everything she said and pretended I had it on video. When she got so scared, I knew it must all be true. Did I do something bad? My 8-year-old daughter had pulled off a bluff that would make professional poker players proud. She'd used Dorothy's own guilty conscience against her, and it had worked perfectly. I pulled her into the tightest hug, tears streaming down my face. "No, baby, you did something incredibly brave. You stood up to a bully." Ryan joined our hug, and I felt his body shaking. When I looked up, he was crying too. "I'm so sorry," he kept repeating. "I should have protected you both. I should have stood up to her years ago." The party salvaged itself in the most unexpected way. The bakery, it turned out, was owned by Mr. Peterson's brother. When he heard what had happened, he personally delivered a brand new cake within an hour, refusing any payment. "Nobody ruins a kid's birthday on my watch," he said. This one had, "Hazel deserves all the happiness in the world," written in golden script. 3 months have passed since that unforgettable birthday party. The fallout was swift and dramatic. Gerald's lawyer discovered that Dorothy had indeed forged several documents related to Harold's will. The vacation house she'd claimed was legally transferred to a trust for the grandchildren. The investigation also revealed that Dorothy had been siphoning money from Harold's estate into private accounts she shared with Richard Hartley, who turned out to be more con artist than lover. He disappeared the moment legal troubles started, taking a good portion of Dorothy's hidden money with him. Dorothy moved to Arizona to live with her sister, her reputation in our community completely destroyed. She sent one letter trying to reconcile, but Ryan returned it unopened. "Some bridges need to stay burned," he told me, and I saw a strength in him I'd never seen before. He started therapy to deal with decades of manipulation and gaslighting. Our marriage has never been stronger. But the best outcome? Hazel learned a lesson that no expensive private school could have taught her. Last week, she won her school's citizenship award for standing up to bullying. During her acceptance speech, she said, "My mom taught me that happiness isn't something other people get to decide for you. It's not about what family you're from or how much money you have or what school you go to. Happiness is about being kind, telling the truth, and standing up for yourself and others. And if someone tells you that you don't deserve to be happy, well, maybe they're the ones who need to look in the mirror." The principal called me crying after the assembly, saying it was the most powerful speech she'd heard from a student in 20 years. Hazel's teacher told me that several kids who'd been dealing with bullying came forward after hearing Hazel's story, finding courage in her example. Ryan and I have started a tradition. Every year on Hazel's birthday, we donate to an anti-bullying charity in Dorothy's name. We figure it's the best way to transform something ugly into something useful. And every year, we order a cake that says, "Deserves all the happiness," though we change whose name goes before it. This year, we're putting Ryan's name. He's earned it. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the smallest teachers. My 8-year-old daughter taught me that standing up to a bully doesn't require actual evidence of their wrongdoing. Sometimes, just the threat of exposure is enough to make their house of cards collapse, because bullies know, deep down, that their power is built on fear and lies. And when someone finally calls their bluff, well, that's when you see who really deserves happiness. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they deserve happiness too. Leave a comment below about a time you or someone you know stood up to a bully. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, happiness isn't something you earn or deserve based on someone else's standards. It's something you choose every single day.